Thank you for joining us at the Evolution of Medicine Summit. A warm welcome. We wanted to make a specific thank you to our sponsors that have made this event possible. Energetics, an innovative natural remedy and supplement company, is committed to revitalizing medicine, and Cyrex Labs, a clinical immunology laboratory specializing in functional immunology and autoimmunity. Most of all, thank you for listening. If you'd like to share this with your colleagues and friends on Facebook if you enjoy the content, and if you have questions, you can ask us on Twitter with the hashtag EvoMed. Finally, if you really want to play your part in accelerating the evolution of medicine, ask your doctor if the Evolution of Medicine Summit might be right for them. Thank you and enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Evolution of Medicine Summit. I'm your host, James Maskell, and very excited to be with you here today in the Evolution of Nutrition Day. It's Friday, the 12th of September, and I have with me today one of my heroes in the field of health and nutrition. Some people know her as Food Babe, other people know her as Vani Hari. Vani, such a pleasure to have you here on the Evolution of Medicine Summit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Now, your work is not considered probably traditionally in the traditional use of the word working in medicine, but what we've been learning about all the way through the summit is this evolution of medicine to a medical system that is more evolved, that is more participatory and empowered. And I just had to have you here on the summit because I feel like the work that you are doing is really important in shaping how Americans and the rest of the world eat. But also I think that activism is really important. So I guess the first question I want to ask you is, what does it feel like to go to work every day and do something that you love?
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. It really, really is. And, it's so funny. I was just telling a reporter the other day that, if I won the lottery, 5 or 6 years ago, I would have, quit my job, gone and traveled the world. I would have taken up a bunch of different hobbies and probably, hired an organic chef and those type of things. But now, if I were to win the lottery today, there is nothing I would change about my life because I'm so passionate about the work that I'm doing, and I'm so incredibly stunned and awed and amazed at the amount of momentum we are having together as we come together and start holding these food companies and food industry giants accountable for all of the screwed up policies and procedures and ingredients that they put into our food supply. And to be a part of that movement, to just say that, I'm doing something that's shaping and changing the world to make it a better place, I can't imagine doing something more meaningful. And again, if I were to win the lottery today, I would be doing the exact same thing I'm doing right now, which is holding these food industry giants accountable and building an army of people that are willing to take back their health and voice their opinion about what's happening to the food supply.
Absolutely. And for those of people who are listening who aren't familiar with Vani's work, she's taken companies like Kraft, Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, Subway, and most recently the beer companies to task on some of their ingredients. For me, growing up in England, it's been very interesting to see American products and English products. I know you've shown a lot about that, and we'll get into that a lot more as we go along. But I guess one thing that we both have in common is that we both were working in corporate jobs and then sort of left to pursue our passion. And it sounds like from what I've heard of your story that in your job, when you were moving in that direction, you had quite a regular interaction with the medical system. What was that like, the sort of pre-Food Babe interaction with the medical system?
Well, my entire life I had been sick. I was in and out of doctors' offices all the time. I was on 6 to 8 prescription drugs, depending upon the season, to control various ailments that I had. I had everything from eczema, asthma, allergies, to appendicitis, to eventually endometriosis. I had my stomach cut open twice in my life. So I've been in and out of hospitals, and even to diagnose some of those things had to be poked and prodded and tested all these different things that also cause different reactions. So, I've seen what it's like to take the information that's given to you from traditional doctors and just blindly accept it and do what they tell you to do. And I've also seen what happens when you start to empower yourself and start to learn about natural ways on how to improve your body, how to improve your health, how to take some alternative therapies and take them into action and seeing how they might work to change your body. And I've seen those work as well. And so for me, it was all accidental. You know, I grew up as a child from immigrant parents who came from India, who knew nothing but organic food over there. They had one cow that they shared throughout the village. They ate dairy in a very small amount, condiment amount. They ate an abundance of fruits and vegetables and these medicinal spices. And so they had this very healthy diet. And when they came to the United States to adopt the American lifestyle, because my dad saw so much opportunity here and actually ended up bringing my entire family line here. He was the first person out of my family to come here. He wanted all of us to be American and eat what American people are eating. And so, of course, when he married my mom and had an arranged marriage and brought her here on their honeymoon, which they never ever went back, but he introduced a hamburger to her, and slowly she gave it up though because she realized it just didn't work with her body eating McDonald's hamburgers. My dad continued to eat them, and then when my parents had me and my brother, we grew up on fast food. We grew up on McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King. We ate what all the kids around us were eating, and the American food that I saw my friends' moms cooking at home. Well, my mom didn't know how to cook that stuff, so she relied on processed foods, the help of Betty Crocker and the box Salisbury steak that you put into the microwave, and the Fry Daddy. You take the mozzarella sticks out of the freezer and you throw them in the Fry Daddy, like all of these different types of foods that were real popular with kids. They thought of food as just sustenance, just, to make us grow and to make sure we're fed and that, we're growing, because in India there's such a huge amount of poverty. So like we never wasted food growing up. And so if there was a piece of chicken or anything left on the plate, we would be forced to eat it, or my dad would eat it. He'd be the human garbage can of the family. But I mean, this is the kind of food environment that I was growing up in. And I swear, I don't think I ate anything green for the first 16, 15 years of my life, maybe a piece of lettuce here and there on a sandwich, but I never really understood nutrition, and my parents didn't teach it to me. And so I was in this really disadvantaged location in my life as far as trying to heal the different ailments that I had been facing, because as I was growing up, I never felt well. I didn't have a lot of energy as a child. Every time I'd go to a friend's house, spend the night, I'd have an allergic reaction, have to go home. I had eczema all over my face. I did not look pretty at all. And I felt almost like an ugly duckling. And when I tried out for the cheerleading team, actually, in middle school, I never thought, I made the team, but I never, because of my athletic ability, but I never felt like I actually fit in with all of those pretty cheerleader girls. And so I ended up quitting that to join the debate team. It was one of the best decisions of my life, because one of the year's topics was healthcare. And so I started to realize how screwed up the healthcare system was. I didn't really put that information into practice until my own health started to deteriorate after I started working in the corporate world after college and working this really demanding job on the road, traveling, being on the expense account, eating all of these lavish meals. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were catered into our office, and we were just required to just eat through the meals and just keep working and billing to the clients so that we could get this project done. It ended up winning the project of the year, I remember, but I ended up being the sickest of my entire life, gaining 30 to 40 pounds in a really short time frame, having appendicitis, and having this wake-up moment where I said, wait a minute, I'm 22 years old, I'm recovering in a hospital room from a cut down my stomach, and everyone's out shopping for the holidays, December of 2002, and I was like, I can't even go out, I can't even go to a party, I'm recovering from this surgery, and I'm 22 years old, something has to change. And I started to channel all that energy and all of that information I learned about, how to research and debate. And back then, we didn't have Google where you could just Google things. So I had to really learn from scratch, go find the medical journals, spend time in law libraries, go read these old nutrition texts, find these people who were the pioneers in the natural food movement, Ann Wigmore and Gabrielle Cousins, and finding out, like, what are the most nutritious, healing foods that you could possibly eat. And that's where I started, is I started to find out what the most nutritious foods were. And, up until that point in my life when I was 22 years old, I'd never even had oatmeal. It's something as benign as oatmeal. And I remember when I met my husband, who, at the time we were just dating, later on got married 3 years later. I met him shortly after this kind of, epiphany, and he introduced me to oatmeal. I had oatmeal for the first time in my life. And just to think that this whole life I've been eating the worst anti-nutrients, the worst type of chemical additives that the food industry has been putting into food, the pesticides, the genetically engineered ingredients that have been snuck into our food since 1996. All of these things I've been eating in abundance. And I couldn't believe how much my body rebounded once I started to, eliminate all of these different chemicals and anti-nutrients. And I started to go from, eczema all over my face, asthma, all of these prescription drugs, to zero, to feeling the best I've ever felt in my life, to having 10 times more energy than I did 10 years ago when I was 10 years younger. And everyone around me saw this dramatic transformation, and they wanted to know my secrets. My coworkers, my friends, my close family members, they all saw this, and they just couldn't believe it, honestly. They couldn't believe I went from this person that was always in and out of the doctor's office to someone who was like, what? I don't need to go to the doctor anymore. I don't even need to have these prescription drugs. And I just can't even begin to tell you how much of my life was blindly listening to my doctors versus taking control of my health myself, and how much of a demise it had on the early time period of my life. I really felt like I was a zombie for that many years, that I didn't really understand what life was about. And when I started to heal myself and started to eat the right foods, my brain got smarter. I felt better. I was more productive in the world. I was more productive at work, for sure. And I started to excel in every area of my life. Not only my athletic ability, I was able to take on all of these additional, athletic things, like going, doing yoga and tennis and being, and going to CrossFit classes and doing all the things I'd never had energy to do before. And then also had all of this energy to start this blog that my friends and my family members asked me to start. They asked me, just, can you share your recipes? We just want to know what you're doing. We want to know what you're eating. Can you just share those with us? And so I wanted to start this blog. I wanted to call it eathealthyliveforever.com. And I yell over to my husband, who's the tech geek of the family, and I said, hey, I want to register this site. Can you register it for me? And he's like, no one's going to remember that name. It's horrible. It's a horrible name for a website. And he said, well, what about Food Babe? And I said, okay, and at first I was a little shy about calling myself the Food Babe. What are you talking about? And I said, well, why don't I teach other people to become a food babe? Right? To be passionate about what you're eating and find out what you're eating and reject all these foods with chemicals that have been added to it, that are made in the laboratory by synthetic ingredients, and teach people what to do with that. And so I came up with these 3 cartoon images on the blog. I didn't ever put my face on the main page of the blog for almost a year and a half. And hid behind the name Food Babe because I was still working in the corporate world, still working for C-level executives at big banks across the country as part of my profession. And so it was really scary, living this dual life. And eventually, when I realized that I could start sharing the truth in a way that people hadn't heard before, and it started to galvanize action on the web and through social media and through real activism, where you go and you shop and you vote with your dollars every day at the grocery store, and encouraging people to support the right companies, I realized that my 13-year management consulting career working for big banks was not the most important work that I was supposed to be doing. I needed to quit that, and I needed to do this work. And it wasn't until I read this book by Daniel Laporte called The Firestarter Sessions that I started to actually give myself permission to do that, because I was so scared. I was under this, sense of ideology, or this sense, like, from my parents and from my upbringing, that you had to have a corporate job, you had to make money, you had to pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
So all of these, standards that society had built upon me. And I had to kind of break through that, because I wasn't making a dime doing this work on Food Babe. It was pure passion. It was just for fun. It was for my friends, so that they could see the benefits of juicing and see that, why I don't eat Chick-fil-A anymore, and what's really in their favorite yogurt at the mall. And I wanted to tell them all of this information so that, they could feel the energy and feel as vibrant as I was feeling. And not only did they start to see the changes and start to make the changes, but there's so many people across the world started to resonate with my message, to the point we started to get some of these major, huge companies to change their practices and change their ingredients. And so I knew when that started to happen, I had to make a decision. And I made that decision. It was the scariest decision of my life. And I look back now, it's been about, I guess, a year and a half since I made that decision. The blog's only about a little over 3 years old. And I look back at that decision and I'm thinking, gosh, I'm so happy I did that, because now when I wake up every day, and we go back to your first question, James, when I wake up every day, there's no other work that I'd rather be doing than this work that I'm doing today, which is educating people about what's really in their food and getting them to understand the ingredients in their food, and so that they can make better choices for their family and for health, and so that everyone can feel this amazing energy that I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an inspiring story. And I think that, for anyone who's out there, I just feel like there's this, three groups of people that are really listening to the summit. There's patients who want to get well, and they're sort of in the stage that you were at the beginning, and they're just looking for information. There's obviously health professionals. We've got a health professional track, but there's also this sort of third group of people that are well, that know about this, but really want to get involved with living their passion and having their job line up with their passion. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on here. And I also agree with the Daniel Laporte thing. I've had a number of people on my team who work for me who I've given that book to, and it's made a massive difference, even within working as part of my team, and just the self-transformation that's possible. I think it's especially important for women, but I just feel like anyone can get a lot of benefit from that, so it's exciting. So looking back on the last few years, what would you say is sort of like the achievement that you're most proud of? Is it really getting the companies to change, or is it seeing the changes in your sort of local circle of friends? Is it seeing reports of changes from people who are following the blog from other countries? What hits the sort of heart resonance for you about your most important work?
It's funny, because a lot of people have asked me that recently, and, you think it would be getting Chick-fil-A to go antibiotic-free, because, antibiotic-resistant bacteria can wipe out the human race. So that's a huge step, getting a huge major fast food chain to do something like that. Or it could be, getting beer ingredients labeled, on the website for the first time ever in history, where people have been blindly drinking beer with high fructose corn syrup and cancerous caramel coloring and all of these different additives for years, never knew. Or it could be, the kid that had mac and cheese every day for their life, but is also on ADD medication and getting treated for his autism and other things, and not even realizing that yellow dye is made from petroleum and linked to hyperactivity in the children, and has a warning label in Europe but not here, and just bringing attention to those issues. Or getting Subway to take out a very controversial additive that everywhere around the globe, even China, bans, and we're still putting in our food. It's none of those things. It's really none of those things that makes me that proud. What makes me the most proud at the end of the day, every single day, is watching the movement grow. Just being a part of this movement that's taking back their food, that's creating a different shift in marketplace. It's giving the money to the good companies versus the companies that are polluting our bodies and our earth. It's seeing the news, seeing that Walmart is getting into organics, and seeing Costco. When you go there now, half the aisles are full with organic ingredients. It's going to, your local cookout, and you see your friend that you didn't know that could be into health, and she's getting the organic chicken or whatnot, and seeing, like, for example, like my brother who, as having an older brother who's 7 years older, it's really hard to take advice from your little sister. And so for seeing him switch over from, 3 years ago, Diet Coke almost every day to now green juice is, I can't tell you what that means to me. I'm almost brought to tears when I think about that transformation, just within my own family. But I think, the thing that makes me so incredibly excited and that keeps me going every day is that each time I log on to foodbabe.com, or I get on my Facebook page, or I go down the street, I meet someone who is starting to use this information in their own lives, and they're starting to change the world around them just by their own habits. And that's really how we change the world, is when each individual person starts to change. Awesome. And that's how you have a grassroots movement. And that's how you take over someone like Monsanto, who's worth billions of dollars, who's polluting the earth. And that's how we take control of the food system and how we take back control of our health.
That's it. Well, I fully support you, and I'm ready to be on the Monsanto team. One question I have for you, I know I was going to ask you sort of where you see this going, and I know that you were a Democratic rep at the 2012 conference. Do you see, once the Food Babe army swells to enough people to put you into office, that could be a direction that you go?
That's funny. So right now, I think, my mom asked me that question a lot too. So, as of right now, I haven't considered running for office. But the more I think about the people in office and the lack of integrity they have about the health and the future of America's food, I get very energized about possibly running one day. Yeah. And because I feel like, or even just making sure that I support the candidates that are building a better future for us. And right now, the ones that are in the running to be president in 2016 are not promising at all.
No, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very embarrassing. So it's a matter of, like, trying to figure out, if that's the route that I'm going to go, or maybe some other food activists and some other mothers around the world and some other really great thought leaders around the world to start to get into the race. And I think, in order to change the government, you really do have to penetrate it. But also, one of the things that I've found out is that one of the easiest ways to create change is to go after the people with the money, the people who have the power to change the quickest, and those people are actually the companies. And that's what we need to continue to keep doing. There are organizations that are fighting for better regulation in the government and more fair policies, farming policies, et cetera, for organic farmers and things. But I think one of the fastest and easiest ways that the normal everyday person can get involved is to really hold these companies accountable for what they're doing and the unethical, immoral practices that they have within their companies. Like, for example, companies that sell their same exact product to people overseas, but with a better ingredient list, a safer ingredient list. And to us, they're selling us chemicals that have been linked to cancer, linked to hyperactivity in children, or possibly, cause asthma. I mean, there's so many different chemicals that are in our food that are not in other people's foods across the world, and that we need to hold those companies accountable for that disparity, because you have to realize when these companies start to reformulate their products for the exact same products that they sell here, like, say, Pringles or the McDonald's French fries or Starburst. I mean, there's examples run the gamut of every major food company. When they start to reformulate their product differently for another country, they know why they have to do that. They know that that specific chemical, there is a risk associated with it. That country has found a risk, some study, some type of evidence that people shouldn't be eating those ingredients. But instead of doing the moral and ethical thing by selling us all the same products in the world, all human beings, the same products, they continue to sell us the poisonous chemicals. Yeah. And those companies need to be held accountable. And I'm going to continue to do that type of work in the future. And so people will be seeing campaigns associated with that in the future from me, because I think that, again, is one of the most unethical, immoral practices of the food industry today. It needs to stop.
Absolutely. Well, you've got an unlimited marketplace to work with, because that junk is in everything. You know, as I said, growing up in England, it was funny. My first place that I lived in New Haven, Connecticut, for a couple of years, and we lived right opposite an Italian deli. And the Italian deli, all the products that came from Italy had, you know, very few ingredients, clean ingredients, and you could tell very quickly the products that were imported and the products that were made here. It is embarrassing, and I'm really glad that you're going to, you know, keep going in that direction, and I definitely wish you all the best in that. I do have one more question about the politics before we can leave that subject, you know, completely. So, you know, I know a lot of people our age were very excited about Obama when he came in 2008 and excited about the campaign. I have to say I didn't vote for him for a couple reasons, but I felt completely justified in not voting for him in 2009 when he got the Monsanto guy Michael Taylor as his food czar. You know, what are your thoughts about sort of this sort of revolving door between politics and these big food companies? Because it seems like you know, there's not really one side or other that you can vote for and make sure that you're backing good food policy.
Yeah, unfortunately, both sides, Republican and Democrat, have been co-opted by these big food industry giants and the chemical companies like Monsanto, Syngenta, Dow, etc. And so what we need to do is we need to continue to have influence on the leaders that we have, you know, voting rights for, your local congressman, your local city council, especially your local state representatives, because a lot of states right now are taking the control back. They're taking the power back from the federal government, and they're saying, you know what, if you're not going to label genetically engineered ingredients, we're going to label it, and our state's going to vote for that. And you've seen that with Vermont and Connecticut winning their votes, and now Oregon's going to be in November. And I think they have a really good shot. Now, it's up to us, everyday consumers, to remember that each time one of these votes happens, and there's a large sum of money being used to prevent that vote from passing, we need to find out the companies that are spending those dollars to convince people that this law isn't good, even though it's been proven that it won't increase your grocery bill at all. It actually won't, and labels change all the time on products. And any food industry person who's knowledgeable in the food industry knows that. And so it's a complete factual lie. I mean, it's absolutely a lie when these big campaigns come out and they say that your grocery bill is going to increase if we labeled genetically engineered ingredients. Actually, when they've labeled them across the world, I mean, 65 other countries regulate genetically engineered ingredients. When they did it in other countries that are a lot poorer than us, none of this happened. And so you have to look at that empirical evidence. And so these companies, big ones, hiding under an organization called the Grocery Manufacturers Association, are spending millions of dollars to prevent people from knowing that their food has genetically engineered ingredients. And when they prevent people from knowing that, what happens is we continue the proliferation of all these chemicals in our water, in our air, in our food. And these chemicals, the main ingredient that's in one of the most sprayed, the genetically engineered crops that's the most sprayed with this ingredient called Roundup from Monsanto, that ingredient, glyphosate, is actually being found in mother's breast milk now. And that is really frightening. And that really needs to wake people up, because what that means is that the first milk that your baby is getting when they're born is already been tainted with these chemicals that cause cancer, that cause autoimmune disorders, that cause heart disease, that cause all of these different issues kidney, liver failure, and we need to put a stop to this. We should have the right to decide what's in our food. And so as consumers, we need to find out who are those companies hiding under this Grocery Manufacturers Association. And what we'll find is the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the General Mills, the Kraft, all of these huge conglomerates. And then we need to find out what products we buy on a normal basis and then boycott them. Stop buying them and start choosing another brand that's supporting our right to know, supporting this basic human right. I mean, it's a freedom to know what you're eating, and start hammering the policies that way, as opposed to trying to pick a lesser of two evils at the voting booth.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to start making our votes every single time we put something in our mouth.
I couldn't agree with that more, and that's been said so much, in this summit, and it's so true. You only vote once every 4 years, but you're voting every day with the choices that you make, and it's really exciting to see new, even fast food outlets that are healthy, that are starting to proliferate, because people want that, and that is the power of the market system, working very much in our favor, which is obviously what happens if we do it. I just want to ask you a little bit about the internet, because one of the big areas in which medicine is evolving is with technology, and we've talked about on the summit apps and wearables and other things that people are using to get more of an idea of their health. But it also seems that the internet is being used to spread information, and it seems like Food Babe could not really have grown or existed as quickly as it has in the pre-internet era. What role do you think the internet has in helping this sort of evolution and activism, and how do you see that unfolding in the next little while?
Yeah, sure. So I have a confession to make. I was never on Facebook or Twitter or any social media before I started the blog. It was really my friends who said, hey, in order to get your blog to be seen or, to even share it with us, you need to go on Facebook. You need to go on Twitter, and you need to set up these accounts. And, I knew nothing about it because I wasn't on it before that, because you weren't on those type of things when you were in the corporate world. You weren't sharing your personal pictures so that your boss could find them, So when I joined Facebook and when I joined Twitter and when I eventually joined Instagram and Pinterest, and I realized really quickly that they are so incredibly powerful. And one of the things that I realized very quickly is that when you tell someone about something they haven't heard about, or you tell them about a product that they have bought or eaten, and you tell them there's poisons in them, there's toxins in them, they want to tell their friends too. They want to tell their family members. They want to tell everyone that they love. And because on Facebook you're connected to everyone that you love, it's such an amazing place to share that information. And I didn't really understand the power of it until I realized that, my blog had grown from the 5 people it started with, my few friends and my mom, to these people that I didn't know existed. And started seeing their comments and started seeing that they also resonated with this message. And so one of the most powerful things that I've learned about the information that, I research and I share on the blog is that you have to ask your readers and the people that you really want to help inspire to share the message with you. And that is how we've gotten these huge companies to change. It wasn't just me writing a blog post and some people reading it. It was people sharing that information with their friends and their family. And that is the actual power in getting companies to change, because eventually when enough people see it, the media starts writing about it, and people start boycotting a product. They start making other decisions. I'll just give you an example. When I started a campaign to get artificial food dyes out of Kraft mac and cheese, within 24 hours of starting that campaign, I filmed a video with my friend Lisa from 100 Days of Real Food, and we talked about why this was important to us. And we shared this video and we shared a petition, and within 24 hours it was 12,000 signatures, and within 48 hours it was 24,000 signatures, and within a week it was 200,000 signatures, and every single major news network was covering this story, to the point where Kraft lost 14% market share in their mac and cheese. They didn't lose 14%, but their competitor actually gained 14%. So yeah, in all actuality, they lost 14% that next quarter, because people started moving away from the artificial ingredients that Kraft mac and cheese was using to more natural ingredients, and to Annie's, their competitor, who was using organic ingredients. So, this is the power that you have through sharing, starting petitions, making sure that you communicate why this is so important through video, through memes. I didn't even know what that word meant a couple months ago. I've been creating memes all the time, and I don't even know what that meant. But, these pictures with words that really, tell a story about a product or an issue or something that you want to get awareness around. And you want to start sharing that. And it really, without social media, this movement would not be happening at all.
Yeah.
And I don't think without social media we would be able to hold these companies accountable. So it's really important that we continue to, if you're out there and you're a blogger, or you're someone who sees something wrong with the world, share it with your friends on Facebook. Just share it, and you'll find that there's other people that believe in these same things, and they're willing to share it, and then their friends are willing to share it, and then their friends are willing to share it, and that's how you change the world.
That's amazing. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And it's funny because I asked a few people ahead of time, what would you like to ask Food Babe because I'm getting to interview her. And that was one of the things. There's a lot of people saying, like, how did you get so much momentum so quickly? And I really feel like, obviously, that what you just shared there, the power of social media, and also the petitions, I think, is a great way for people to come together and sort of put their name towards something rather than just reading it or sharing it. So I think it's been a great combination there, and I think it's only going to get more powerful. Hashtag Food Babe Army is on the march, and it's very exciting to see the numbers swelling and the power swelling, and certainly getting more and more people on board. I've been a pretty strong advocate over the last few years, really looking at the environmental medicine movement and looking at the environmental issues, and there's one man who I really dislike because he just seems to have everything backwards, and he really doesn't care much for environmental pediatrics or so forth. And his name is Dr. David Gorski, and he was, he enamored me even more with you when I read his take on your work. He said, Food Babe has been a malignant force promoting ignorance about food. Now, I hope after my summit that I get quoted by David Gorski, because then I'll know that I've sort of arrived at doing something of value and power. But how do you respond to someone like that who says you've been a malignant force for promoting ignorance about food?
It's really funny that a lot of these people that, are my critics now, that they think it's a good idea to eat yoga mat chemicals, and they think it's a good idea to eat, industrial synthetic ingredients made from petroleum, and they think it's okay that these companies have reformulated their products for other people overseas, eliminating these chemicals and not for us. They're condoning the status quo. They're condoning the increase in cancer and heart disease and autoimmune disorders and allergies and eczema and asthma and all of these things that are happening to the world. They're condoning this. I don't see some of these people looking for the answer. And if they have such a fancy degree, and if they're a doctor, or if they, have this skill set that they deem so important, why aren't they looking for answers? Why aren't they helping people? Why are they coming after me, a normal everyday girl that wants to share her story about how she transformed her health and her life and wants to share what happened to her with everybody else and hold these food companies that she used to eat accountable. Why are they coming after me? And the only reason they are coming after me is because, like you said, James, it's because you're effective at doing something. And that's the only reason. And it's really unfortunate because they're against common sense. Because common sense, unfortunately, doesn't have to be taught in a, you don't have to have an advanced science degree. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know common sense. And you don't have to be a nutritionist or a scientist to learn how to read an ingredient label.
Absolutely.
And when we start to give this power to the everyday, ordinary citizen, the people with these advanced degrees start to sweat. They start to get scared because they realize they're going to be put out of business. If there's no more cancer, that cancer doctor, Dr. Gorski, is not going to be able to cut, poison, and burn people at the rate that he's doing now. You see?
Yeah.
And I think I just want to mention also, I really encourage you, if you want to look into some of the people who are, criticizing this movement and criticizing the work that we're doing, find out who they're being paid from. Because you'll quickly realize big pharmaceutical industry giants are paying someone like Dr. Gorski. So you got to think, as an individual listening to this summit, and as someone who wants to have all the tools available, you just have to use a little common sense to realize that we need to eat what Mother Nature intended. We need to eat the most nutritious foods on the planet. And we need to make sure that we're creating a food system that is fair and just, that isn't exploiting our best interests, that isn't trying to hide ingredients they're using in their food, that's willing to be transparent so that we can choose the best products for our family. And right now, the system's corrupt, and someone needs to hold that system accountable. And I don't know where I got the courage to do this, James. I have no idea. People ask me that, and I don't know where. And I think it's because of all the screwed up stuff I had to go through in my past, the 22 years of pain and doctor's visits and being a guinea pig for the traditional medical system and being under pharmaceutical drugs for most of my life, to realize that this is not the type of life I want to live. And there's so many people right now that are living that life that they don't even understand what's on the other side. And I want to show them that. I really do, because I think if they start to see this and they start to change their lives, the world will just ultimately become the most beautiful, amazing place. And that's really what I want to have my legacy do.
Absolutely. And I'm 100% with you. And I find myself in a similar sort of position where, you've got the food industry. I hope that this, summit that I'm doing will make waves in the medical industry. And it's not really anything to do with me, actually, because these things are happening independent of me. We've just seen during this summit, we're going to have actually tomorrow during Mark Hyman's talk as part of the sort of health professional track, he's talking and announcing a new collaboration between the Institute of Functional Medicine and the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic is one of the most innovative medical institutions in the country. They see that being serious about food and lifestyle factors and understanding systems biology is a crucial step in really reversing autoimmune disease and chronic disease. And so, this is happening. It's happening now. It's exciting to see that it's happening. And it must be exciting for you to see that there is sort of like this other medical paradigm that is emerging that has food at such a central focus to it.
I know, it really is. And it's, you mentioned Dr. Mark Hyman. He is such an incredible person who's just he's dedicated his life to saving people and really teaching them functional medicine, using food as medicine. And it's just so incredible watching him do his work. And I'm so excited that he's, going to be on talking about this, because I think so many people will find his talk so valuable. And I found his work so meaningful. And really that's where the world's heading is to that functional medicine space, because the more we learn about food, the more we understand that its power. And I wish traditional medicine education starts to incorporate that, and so that doctors also can be educated about food. And so when I go into a doctor's office next time, it isn't, here's a prescription for so-and-so, why don't you try yoga, or why don't you try meditation, or why don't you try not drinking so much coffee, like all of these different things that they could, bring to the tool set to make someone healthy.
Absolutely. And your work in helping us to support this, our goal is, one, to, get more patients interested in going to doctors that do this type of approach, and then also to make sure that these doctors are providing a remarkable experience for these patients, so that this does become a big part of medicine. And Jeff Glad, who's speaking, when I had him speak, Dr. Jeff Glad is a doctor from Indiana, and he sees that this integrative medicine movement that's happening, his vision is like that the micro practices will have these small practices across the country that will do, in every town, treating this way and engaging community. He sees it in a sort of a similar way, as this is the same response to pharmaceutical driven medicine as farmers markets were to Walmart. It's just a sort of a natural response and an adaptation based on the fact that those industries have sort of taken us so far away from a healthy, normal, optimal evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. So I did ask some people, what would you like Food Babe to kick ass on next? And I do have one thing that came up again and again. If food is the ultimate upstream medicine, I think a lot of people out there would be really happy if you took on baby formula.
Yeah, that's a big one.
There's some junk in baby formula, I'll tell you that now.
Yeah, there's a lot of junk in baby formula. Not only is there a bunch of synthetic ingredients used to make the vitamins that they put in baby formula, but they're usually made with genetically engineered soy and corn ingredients. Majority of them are non-organic. The ones that they have in the hospital, ready for newborns, not organic. Possibly can be contaminated with pesticides. Sugar, yeah. Oh my goodness, corn syrup. and corn syrup solids and baby formula. Yeah, I've written about how to choose the best organic one, and even then, even choosing the best organic one is a really hard feat. There isn't many that you can choose from that are legitimately good, and it's a really sensitive area as well, because so many women, take this issue very personally. If they're not able to breastfeed, if there's some reason preventing them from doing that, and they have to go to a formula, there's not a lot of choices. And so what I usually recommend is, that Weston A. Price has a great recipe for your own homemade formula, and that would probably be the best choice if you decide to formula feed your child. And I know a lot of mothers don't have the time or the effort, or they want to put in the effort to do that. But I think that is one of the best things. And then there's also some formulas coming out of Europe that you can order online. There's one called Holly, I think, from Germany that is somewhat decent. Yeah. But again, we do need better formulas for babies here in the United States and around the globe. And I definitely see that as being a big issue. And when I think about all the work that needs to be done, including this issue, I know I'll be working till the day I die, because there's so many products that we have to change. And this brings up, just thoughts of Pediasure and Pedialyte and Ensure and all these products that are made by the pharmaceutical industry, Abbott Enterprises. Similac, they make Similac, the baby formula. So they are all creating these really disgusting formulas of synthetic vitamins and minerals, along with very processed ingredients, and calling it health food to give to people who are sick. And that has to stop. And it's really reprehensible what's happening.
Well, I can tell you that if you do decide to publish or do a petition for formula, there will be hundreds of other bloggers who are very much more, passionate about children's care, who would be right behind you, and certainly I would as well. And I think that down the road, if you see a gap in your schedule to do that, that would be a great choice of next steps. So, I guess as an activist, obviously we need a lot more food babes and people doing this kind of work out there in all different industries. It's not even just food and just medicine. We're talking about it now. Just, as we draw to a close here, what words do you have for empowering everyday people, just like you were 10 years ago, to go out and become interested in a topic and become an activist? Because I can see from just following you the last 3 years how quickly you've been able to scale your impact in the digital era. What do you say to people who sort of feel like they have something to give inside of them, but just haven't been able to let it out yet?
Yeah, I think the main thing you have to do is you have to share it. You have to share it with your friends. You have to share it with your family. You have to start talking about it. And as long as you keep quiet about your passions, they're never going to become real. And so it's absolutely critical that you start talking about it. And, Food Babe wasn't born 3 years ago. It was born a lot earlier than that. It was those conversations I was having with my coworkers on the road where we would go out to eat all the time, and I was asking the server a certain question or making sure we had to go to a certain restaurant, or was asking about like where the closest natural food store was, and taking them along with me to show them the differences in foods. And, it was born when, I was traveling with my girlfriends and I was bringing my food along with me in my snack bag, and I wouldn't buy anything from the airport. It was born in all these experiences when I'd go into my mom and do a pantry raid and like freak out at the Cheetos in her, in her pantry. You know what I mean? It was like, it was born in all these ways where, like, I was talking about this, where everybody saw that I was super passionate about it and realized, like, this is something that they needed to know, too. And so whether it be food or health or yoga or some other type of activity or something that you're super passionate about, just start making it your life. Start talking about it. Start sharing it. And then, and one thing that, I didn't realize is that a blog is so powerful, and because it really gives you the space to express your feelings, express what you're thinking, and you'll find out very quickly that there are other people that think like you and that want to do what you're doing too, and that want to help your mission. And so not only share it with the people around you, but start sharing it on the internet. And, I didn't follow a lot of blogs when I started blogging. I didn't know that there were all of these amazing health blogs out there and food blogs that are tackling a lot of these same issues. I had no idea, and now I've networked to the point where I know a lot of them. And it's so comforting to know that there's this array of people and support out there that can help spread your message, give you guidance, give you advice. You can help spread their message in return, and it's just a way to build community. And so start blogging. It's just so super easy, and it's really, inexpensive to do, and then if it becomes your passion, then you need to start, making some choices in life. And again, I recommend fire starter sessions for everyone who is in that situation where they know they want to do something, but aren't quite sure or too scared to take the leap or fearful that they're not making the right decision. Because what Danielle LaPorte does in that book is she asks you the questions that make it really abundantly clear why you were put on this earth, what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And then she encourages you to go do it. And if you do it by the end of that book, then, I'd be surprised that if many people don't do what they're supposed to do after reading that book.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the Firestarter Sessions by Danielle LaPorte. It's a great book. I would add my 2 cents into there, which would be The Icarus Deception by Seth Godin. I think he's awesome, and it's a similar type of topic. Vani, I want to thank you so much for being on the Evolution of Medicine Summit. I've got one last question for you, which I've asked all of the guests that we've had on the Evolution of Medicine Summit, and that is, when I say the words, the evolution of medicine, what does that bring up in you? What resonates with you?
You know, evolution rhymes with revolution too,
Yeah.
and I think it's not by accident that it does. And so, when I think about the evolution of medicine, I think about how people, ordinary citizens, can start to evolve their own health and start to revolt against the traditional systems that are out there just to make money, and realize that taking control of their own health and taking control of their own food and their body is the most important thing. And I think that importance is starting to shift dramatically. People used to outsource their health. They used to outsource their food. And now you're starting to see this movement for people starting to care about their food and where it comes from and start cooking. And you're starting to see that people are, I can treat all of these different ailments more naturally, or I can pick a doctor that believes in functional medicine and believes that, there's other ways to treat something other than the traditional prescription route. And so I see a revolution within the people when I think about the evolution of medicine.
That's great. Well, I didn't expect anything less. Vani Hari is a revolutionary in food, and it's just a matter of time before that translates into medicine, as it's such a big part of medicine. On behalf of everyone who's in the medical movement, in the functional medicine movement, and everyone that I know and work with, everyone I know, really thinks the best of what you're doing, and I hope that it's part of my mission, my time, for the rest of my time on this planet, to be able to work synergistically with people like yourself to really engage change and empower people. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. And just a big thank you, and thank you so much for making time to be on the Evolution of Medicine Summit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. This has been the Evolution of Medicine Summit. This is your host, James Maskell. We are back this weekend. Ask your doctor. If you're listening to this, ask your doctor if the Evolution of Medicine Summit might be right for them. All day Saturday and all day Sunday, we have speakers, clinical and non-clinical, for doctors about the evolution of medicine and the evolution of business models and practices. And, if you're listening to this and you're inspired, drop your doctor a line. Get him to listen to something this weekend, and we can all start to be activists and all make a difference in changing medicine towards an empowered system that serves all of us. It's been great being with you on with all of you today, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot.